Welcome to Rise Untold, where the stories behind the spotlight come alive. For decades, Annie Denver lived quietly in the shadow of one of America's most beloved music legends. To the world, John Denver was the golden-haired troubadour, the voice of Take Me Home, Country Roads, and Annie's Song. The man whose music made millions believe in love, hope, and home. But behind closed doors, behind the warm smile and gentle melodies, there was a side of John Denver that the public never saw. A side Annie kept hidden for almost an entire lifetime. Until now, Annie Martell met John in the mid-60s, when neither of them could have imagined the heights he would reach. She was young, shy, and grounded. He was ambitious, charming, and bursting with talent. They married in 1967, when John was just starting to make his mark. For years, she was the quiet force beside him, supporting his career, moving with him. From city to city, standing in the wings at concerts while thousands of strangers screamed his name, in 1974, when John released Annie's Song. The world assumed they were living the perfect love story. The ballad was pure poetry, a man declaring his devotion to the woman who inspired him. It soared to #1, cementing John as not just a star, but a romantic icon. Fans saw Annie as the luckiest woman in America. What they didn't see was the cracks forming behind the scenes. Annie has always been private, avoiding interviews and turning down offers to tell her story. For years, she brushed off the rumors. But now, at 78, with nothing left to lose and a lifetime of memories to sort through, she's speaking out. And what she says will forever change the way you see John Denver. She reveals that the perfect marriage was anything but. The touring, the fame, the constant adoration from strangers, it all began to change him. He drank more. He stayed out longer. And when the pressures of fame collided with his own insecurities, it often exploded behind closed doors. Annie admits there were arguments that turned physical, nights where she locked herself in a room just to feel safe. She remembers the first time he smashed their furniture in a fit of rage, something she never thought the gentle, smiling man on album covers could do. But it wasn't just temper. Annie says John carried a deep loneliness, one that success could never cure. On stage, he was adored. Off stage, he struggled with who he really was. The man the world loved wasn't always the man he saw in the mirror. That disconnect ate at him. It drove him to impulsive decisions, and one of them nearly destroyed their marriage for good. Annie reveals that John confessed to her about an affair with a woman he met on tour. She says the betrayal cut deeper than anything she had ever felt, not because of the infidelity alone, but because it made her realize the man who wrote Annie's Song wasn't writing about their present love, but about a love that was already slipping away. She stayed for years after, hoping he'd find his way back to the man she once knew. They adopted 2 children, and Annie focused on giving them a stable home. But by the early 80s, she knew she couldn't save the marriage. Their divorce in 1982 shocked fans, but Annie kept her silence. She didn't want to ruin his image, didn't want to feed tabloids, and, as she admits now, she still loved him, in her own way, when John died tragically in a plane crash. In 1997, Annie grieved like the rest of the world. But unlike the fans who mourned a hero, she mourned the complicated man she had truly known. She stayed quiet for more than 2 decades, even as documentaries painted their love as a fairy tale that just faded. But now, she says the truth matters more than the myth. Not to tarnish his legacy, but to show that even the brightest stars have shadows. Annie describes a man of extremes, capable of breathtaking kindness and brutal selfishness. A man who could make you feel like the only person in the world, and yet vanish emotionally when you needed him most. She says his music was his confession, a way to express feelings he couldn't face in real life. When he sang of longing, he was singing about his own inability to hold on to happiness. Her decision to speak now isn't about revenge. It's about honesty. She believes the world should know that behind every legend is a human being, flawed, complicated, and often struggling in ways their fans will never imagine. And maybe, in telling her story, someone else living in silence will find the courage to speak, too. Annie says she will always remember the good moments. The nights they stayed up talking until dawn, the times he made her laugh so hard she cried, the look in his eyes when he first played her Annie's Song. But she will also remember the fear, the betrayal, and the pain. Because that was the truth, and love is never just one thing. And so, after 78 years of life and decades of silence, Annie Denver has finally exposed John Denver's darkest secret. Not to destroy the man, not to stain his legacy, but to reveal something deeper. That even in the most beautiful melodies, there can be notes of sorrow that will never be erased. For so long, people wanted the legend. They wanted the perfect love story. They wanted to believe that the man who sang about the beauty of the mountains, the warmth of a lover's embrace, and the simplicity of coming home was living in that same perfect world himself. Annie knew the truth, that perfection is an illusion, and the human heart is far more complex than the songs it inspires. Her words don't erase the joy his music gave to millions. They don't take away the smiles his voice brought to strangers, on long drives or quiet evenings. But they do something equally important. They remind us that idols are human. That fame is not a shield against loneliness, against mistakes, against the kind of choices that can wound the people closest to you. Annie says she never hated him, even in the worst moments. Because hate is easy. What's hard is loving someone you can't trust, holding on to the memory of who they once were while facing the reality of who they've become. She says that's the part people don't talk about, how you can still love someone even as you walk away from them. And maybe that's why it took her this long to speak. Time has a way of softening certain edges, but sharpening others. The pain doesn't vanish, it just changes shape. The years allowed her to remember the laughter alongside the tears, the light alongside the darkness. And in the end, she decided that telling the full story, the messy, complicated human story, was a way of honoring both. Because John Denver was not just the smiling man on the album cover. He was a dreamer, a fighter, a flawed human being with moments of brilliance and moments of deep regret. Annie's truth doesn't make him smaller. If anything, it makes him real. And maybe that's what his fans deserve to know, that the man behind the music lived a life as tangled, as bittersweet, as fragile as the rest of us. So when you listen to Annie's song, again, you might hear it differently. You might hear not just love, but longing. Not just joy, but the ache of knowing joy can slip away. You might hear the truth that Annie has carried for a lifetime. That beauty and pain are often intertwined, and the most unforgettable art comes from that collision, that if they could survive that and still rise, maybe you can too. Maybe your own scars don't have to erase your song. Maybe they can become the most powerful part of it. The cracks in your heart, the mistakes you wish you could take back, the nights you thought would break you. All of it can become part of your melody. Because a song without struggle is just notes. It's the pain, the resilience, the hard-earned lessons that give it depth. Annie's story reminds us that truth, no matter how heavy, doesn't have to destroy you. It can free you. For years, she carried this silent weight, protecting a man's image at the cost of her own voice. But when she finally spoke, it wasn't anger that poured out. It was clarity. It was the knowledge that beauty and pain can exist in the same place, and that telling the truth can be its own kind of love. Maybe you've been there too, holding a story you think will shatter everything if it's spoken. But here's the secret. It won't just break things, it will also heal them. It will make space for something new, something more honest. Life will not always be soft and gentle. Sometimes it will be sharp. Sometimes it will cut deep, leaving marks you never thought you'd carry. There will be moments when the world feels heavy, when nothing makes sense, when even the things you once loved feel out of reach. It will get messy. It will be unfair. Annie knows that feeling. She's lived through it. She's been the woman smiling in public while crumbling in private. She's been the one who stayed silent, not because she didn't have something to say, but because she thought her truth might burn down everything around her. She knows what it's like to love someone who doesn't always love you in the way you need, to stand by someone while they hurt you, to defend them when the world asks questions, to protect their image while yours fades into the background. But here's the thing Annie learned. You can carry pain without letting it poison you. You can walk through betrayal and still choose grace over bitterness. You can take the worst moments of your life and turn them into a story that doesn't just belong to you anymore, but to everyone who needs to hear it. You can take the jagged edges of your past and polish them into something someone else can hold without bleeding. That's what Annie has done. She didn't speak now to punish John Denver's memory. She spoke because truth, no matter how much it hurts, is never as destructive as silence. We are taught to believe that love is pure, perfect, and unshakable. But real love, the kind that survives the years, is often scarred. It's stitched together by forgiveness, even when it's hard to give. It's a mix of good and bad, of nights you want to remember forever and nights you wish you could erase. Annie's truth is proof that love can be both breathtaking and unbearable. There's a temptation to see people like John Denver as larger than life, as flawless figures, who lived the lyrics they sang. But Annie's story pulls back the curtain and shows that even legends are human. They make mistakes. They hurt people. They fight battles that no stage or spotlight can fix. And maybe that's the real lesson, that greatness in one area of life doesn't erase the struggles in another. We all have a version of this story, don't we? Maybe not with a famous musician. Maybe not with a public divorce. But we've all loved someone who let us down. We've all carried a truth we thought was too heavy to speak. We've all looked at a beautiful memory and realized it came with shadows. The real courage isn't in pretending those shadows don't exist. It's in standing in the middle of them, with the light and the dark side by side, and saying, "This is my life. This is my song, and I won't hide any part of it." That's where grace comes in. Grace isn't weakness. Grace is strength. The kind that chooses dignity over revenge, that chooses to share the truth not to destroy, but to free yourself and maybe help someone else find their way. Annie carried her truth for decades. She waited until the anger faded and the need to protect gave way to the need to be real. That's grace. You can choose that too. You can take your most painful chapters and make them part of the melody, instead of trying to tear them out. Your scars don't erase your song. They give it texture, depth, meaning. Without them, it's just empty notes. Think about it. The most powerful songs aren't the ones that are perfectly in tune from start to finish. They're the ones that crack a little on the high notes, that let the raw emotions spill through, that tell a story you can feel in your chest. Life is the same. Perfection is forgettable. Honesty is unforgettable. Maybe your truth will make someone see you differently. Maybe it will make them uncomfortable, but it might also make someone else feel less alone. It might be the reason they find the courage to tell their own story. That's the quiet power of speaking up. You never know who's listening, who's waiting for someone else to go first. Annie went first. She told the part of the story that no song, no documentary, no fan magazine ever told. And in doing so, she gave permission for the rest of us to admit that our stories aren't picture perfect. So maybe, just maybe, this is where the real music begins. Not in the rehearsed performances or the flawless recordings, but in the unpolished truth. In the verses written from both love and loss. In the moments you wish had gone differently, but now form the heart of who you are. Maybe it begins when you stop trying to write the kind of song you think the world wants to hear, and start singing the one that's been inside you all along. Because the truth is, your story, every part of it, is worth hearing. Even the messy chapters, even the broken chords, especially those. They are the parts that make it real. They are the parts that will resonate in someone else's heart, long after the final note fades. And when you finally have the courage to share it, you might just find that the very thing you thought would silence you becomes the reason your voice is heard louder than ever before.